So here's what we got for you guys today. So we're going to start by talking about what ifs. So outside of just like the common narratives and trends that take place in sports, one of the things that I think is really important as true sports fans is to acknowledge that context matters. And oftentimes what we think about certain situations, trades, free agency, results in seasons, whatever the case may be, it's not what it appears. And so, what we're going to talk about is a couple of our favorite what ifs in terms of mine go high school, college, and pro. I know Jeff focused more on the professional side of things, but there's a lot of different scenarios that truly impact the trajectory of sports, especially basketball. So I'll let you kick it off with some of your favorites. Give us one to start.
Let's start off with the oldest one that I have on my little list here. Um, Anthony Carter's agent completely dropping the ball, leading to a Miami Heat title in '06. Now, how did this happen? Some of you may be even wondering who's Anthony Carter, because you're not an all-star, not a superstar, good player in the league, journeyman, good player. Um, his agent was supposed to pick up a player option for the Miami Heat in 2003. He never sent the paperwork into the league office, never notified the Heat of his intentions. Anthony Carter, assuming he's still on the roster, is thrust into free agency against his better or his will. Well, he had no call in the say. And then that gave them the cap flexibility to then sign Lamar Odom, which was the main centerpiece of the trade that got them Shaq
Got it.
2 years later. So they don't win the title without Shaq. I don't think this is any tales out of school, and all from a blunder, just a complete oversight.
So was that 2 years prior to the Shaq trade? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but they signed Lamar Odom in
I
that free
see.
agency period, which they wouldn't have been able to do had they not had that cap space open up from literally him not being able to pick up his player option.
If you think back about like what a crazy situation that '06 finals was, when
Totally.
you think about like Dwayne Wade just being the best player in the world for a span of 2 weeks.
Shooting a billion
Um,
free throws.
Shooting 1 billion free throws, foul merchant prior to there being foul merchants.
True.
That was when Dirk was honestly just at his absolute peak. He was pretty much unguardable at that point in his career. And then Shaq, like, gosh, to go from the Lakers, that was the first year he was on the Heat, was it not?
Second year.
Second year that he was on the Heat. I mean, to make that turnaround so quickly and then to win with another franchise, like, and all of that stems from a blunder from an agent. Do you think that guy still has a job?
That's a great question. I probably should have researched that just to see because unless it's like your childhood lifelong friend, that's got to be we got to talk about that. You owe
Yeah,
me something.
that's yeah, for sure needs to
This
be
cost me eight
discussed.
million dollars and yourself 800,000 or something in that ballpark.
That is truly a horrific blunder, and I'm sure that his family is furious at him. Probably a few,
How
probably a
dare
few, probably a few less vacations after that one. Mine is going to be kind of one that is a bit more serious. I got to go Len Bias. I mean, I don't know if I'm sure that everyone has kind of seen highlights, documentaries, whatever the case may be online. You talk about someone who was just simply before his time. Um, I don't believe there was anyone in the league at that point who was his size with that specific skill set. There were players 6'8", there were players 6'9". They were extremely skilled during that time. But to have the vertical ability that he did, to be someone who is from Maryland, to go to the University of Maryland, I mean, it's always going to be such a what if as to like, what if they put that together legitimately? Could they have played him in a lineup on the Celtics where he was the two? Like, talk about being before your time. Now it's pretty common that we see larger lineups and 6'7s and, above from the 2 through 5 position. But just truly a heartbreaking experience in terms of the what ifs. My high school head coach graduated from DeMatha and Washington in the Washington D.C. area, and he speaks like everyone in that area at that time knows exactly where they were when that news dropped that he had passed. So to me, I think that that is just an unbelievable what if, and it's kind of an odd thing that now we're seeing so many players take on that stature with that perimeter skill set. But certainly a player ahead of his time that we all wished had worked out and had seen in the league.
Yeah, massive tragedy. I mean, I think the theoretical greatness that was always talked about. Obviously, I was too young, but the film doesn't lie. And people say he rivaled MJ, and he could have been the next great thing. And to think that he was going into a situation that maybe was the best situation that any player could have ever been drafted to in the history of sports. I mean, the '86 Celtics were as good of a team as had that have been in the NBA. And he would have been part of one of those great Celtics teams. So just to think about what could have been, it's such a huge tragedy, and the fact that it's never happened really before or after kind of
Right.
shows just the uniqueness of it all. And I think you could even argue like this is the what if of sports, what ifs of all sports really, because I mean he was considered to be the next great um, to rival Michael Jordan throughout that era.
God, can you also imagine what that would have meant for the NBA? Like,
Like another Bird Magic, like not even 5 years later.
but people who would kind of have to like really guard each other.
Oh yeah,
Like not the same position, but not totally dissimilar because they're both wing-esque players, guard wing players. So truly a tragedy, like you said, but that's one that, whenever I see a Len Bias jersey, that your heart goes out to those type of moments for sure.
definitely. Um, we'll stay on the sad train. Looking at keeping in order with the chronological order here. Derrick Rose's MVP, his injury, all that. What if he never wins the MVP? I think that's often
Hmm.
considered a very controversial MVP. He obviously played for the number one seeded Bulls that year. They were great. The team was great, but I think it often gets he as good as he was, the best player on the best team. That's not what the MVP typically stands for. I mean, we saw Russell Westbrook get it as a fourth seed or sixth seed or whatever they were,
Right.
and uh, it's really more speaks to the individual greatness. I mean, he had a team of the defensive player of the year candidate, Joakim Noah, Luau Deng, All Star, Carlos Boozer, All Star.
Crazy good team.
Very, very good team, and they deserve all the praise that they got. But if LeBron, who we I think all agreed, again, this is not the criteria for the award, but he was the best player in the league at the time,
Mhm.
and I don't think there's really any discussion about that. Um, had he gotten it, what would that have meant for everyone's legacy involved? If Derrick Rose then gets injured shortly thereafter, within the
Sure.
next year or whatever, his entire career trajectory is talked about differently. He's not this as great of a what if as he is still. I think people would talk about him more in a Brandon Royce sense or a Yao Ming sense, not as like this perennial potential top 10, top 20 player of all time, the potential
Yeah.
best point guard to ever play. I just think the tone would have been a little bit different, and I wonder what that would have looked like. People are still considering maybe has a Hall of Fame case, which he
Sure.
does because every MVP has made the Hall. But what if that weren't the case? What if he didn't win the MVP? Would he still be a Hall of Famer? It's
Right.
interesting to think about.
I think that what it makes me think about is, for one, like how astonishingly good he was at his size and his prime. A couple weeks ago, I put him on my top 10 favorite players to watch list. And I do believe that. Like, you could pull up Derrick Rose highlights right now, and it's still just an absolute show, especially from high school. But to me, like, part of what you're saying is, what about like any injury, what if? Right? Like not just D Rose, but like
Sure.
what does it mean for T Mac? What does it mean for Gilbert Arenas? What does it mean for Grant Hill? What does it mean for like Yao Ming, right? Like your boy. It's like those are the types of questions that I think are fascinating. And it really speaks to like in the GOAT conversation in general, not enough is paid attention to context. Like, there's so much that goes into the greatness conversation, your health, the organization you're drafted into, the coach that you have within that organization. Is the system, are your teammates going to be? It all comes back to this idea of alignment, which we've talked a lot about in the recruiting process and in transfers recently. But it's the same thing when it comes to those type of conversations. Um, like when you think about all of those things taking place, can you knock certain players for making certain decisions? I don't know, but that's neither here nor there. I digress. For me, the next one that I had was about the one and done rule. So I think that it's a fascinating situation as to the NBA trying to solve this perceived issue of high school players going to the NBA and not being prepared for the NBA. I think that we can agree that that was kind of the reason and the rationale for them to want to do that. Did it ultimately solve the problem? No. Did it lead to other avenues for kids to get to where they want to go? Yes, it did. The prep school wave, I think, is a huge part of that. But imagine if you actually had to have some of these great players that went straight to the NBA in college. Like, what if you had, I mean, here are just two that I thought of right off the rip. What if Kobe went to Duke, right? Like, can you imagine what those mid 90s Duke teams would have been? Can you imagine a team of like upperclassmen Kobe with Shane Battier and Elton Brand? Like, I
Ridiculous.
mean, that's an absurd, and that's not even including Corey Maggette, who was also on that roster. What if Amari went to Memphis?
Jeez.
Like you're talking, like there's so many players that really just change the game when it comes to that. Imagine Jermaine O'Neal, imagine KG, imagine T-Mac, imagine, I mean, just there's so many numbers of them. Um, what would that have meant for the NCAA and how would it have impacted the NBA? I think that these are questions worth looking into for sure.
Yeah, and I think to your original point, like their attempt was to try to, I think, help the NCAA and help uh,
Hmm.
kind of the farm system, if you will, kind of how baseball has implemented it. And it backfired because then it just led to guys calling the bluff, either one and dunning it, which really didn't do a whole lot for the
Sure.
college athletics, or just finding overseas alternatives. I mean, we saw as early as guys like Brandon Jennings were like, I mean, his was a little bit uh, unrelated to that reason, but guys would just go overseas and try other paths. Now,
Sure.
not bearing results, but it is interesting to think like, what about LeBron? What about all these guys that just were able? Dwight
Yeah,
Howard.
why am I forgetting LeBron? Like, well, how stupid of me. Like
I mean, Moses Malone. You could go for on and on and on.
right.
It's just interesting to think about all the select special. I mean, even Monte Ellis. Monte Ellis would have been a great college player too. Tons of guys.
Unbelievable. I mean, what if LeBron went to like Akron and won it all?
I've been still. Hey, let's do that. There you go. That's the question. Could LeBron take a 16 seed to the championship? We would have found out.
If LeBron and his four teammates all went to Akron simultaneously, do they make the Final Four that year?
Great question. It's something I'm gonna have to marinate on. My last one, rounding out my what ifs, I have the infamous Kendrick Perkins amnesty, which for those who don't remember, after the lockout
So
happened,
good.
every team was granted, given just gift wrapped, a free get out of jail free card or a one time get out of jail free card. It's an amnesty clause, basically saying you can wipe one contract completely off your books. Obviously, you still have to pay that contract, but it does not go against your cap. So at that time, especially with small market teams, that was a huge tool. The funniest, I think it's a worth an aside. The funniest of all these is the Wizards signing Andre Blatch to an extension while having their amnesty clause, signing him to an extension and then using it on him. Thank you. And anywho,
I'm
so
confused, but how does that work?
Washington's dumb. They just tripped over their own feet. They literally signed a player.
So they had to pay him and amnesty him?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh my God.
maybe one of the dumbest moves ever, but not quite as dumb as when you have a player like James Harden, eventual MVP on your roster, and you're paying a obviously the worst of your 4 or 5 starters, excuse me, Kendrick Perkins. You can amnesty his contract. You can retain James Harden for the price that he demanded, that sub max. Keep Russell Westbrook, who's already been extended. Keep Kevin Durant, who's already been extended. Keep Serge Ibaka, and run it back with those four and whatever else. Whatever
Any
else
big, any
you
big,
go back in
any big.
2013, 14,
Right.
15. I mean, where is the Warriors dynasty? The Heat wouldn't have had the
That's a
same
great
success.
point.
The Spurs wouldn't have had the same type of success. This is one of the biggest ripple effects. Shea never comes to. I mean, how many what ifs could come from this?
Right.
what is the butterfly effect from arguably the worst thing in history? And also, not for nothing, they got back Kevin Martin, Jeremy Lamb, two firsts, and a second round pick. So
Who'd they turn that into?
pretty sure Steven Adams was one of them. I can look now, but thank you for putting me on the spot with that.
No, but I think that you're 100% right. Like, how different would the conversation around big three have been if they had been? Because I mean, you get the LeBron, D Wade, and Bosh situation, right? But like those three, you had never seen it that young, where like you all get signed again, you all get to run it back. And really, you're put in a situation where in Houston, Harden and Westbrook showed they can play together in the backcourt and be effective. Then you're adding the best scorer of all time in Kevin Durant. I mean, good gracious, like it would have just been an unbelievable. Yeah, but then again, also another what if is what does that mean for them now?
It,
Like,
it was Houston. They did take Steven Adams.
okay,
That was the only one that ever panned out. The other two
okay.
weren't rotation players.
But you got to think that they're not who they are now if they had that situation back then.
Totally.
So totally different thing. But the way I'm going to round it out is actually bringing it back to my days at Henderson Collegiate. Um, I talk about this often with former players, and some of them have been posting on their Instagram stories kind of past pictures of just fond memories and fond togetherness that we had. Um, really special journeys with those teams when I was there and building that varsity team for the course of 5 years. But the second year that we had a varsity team, as many people know, we were 31-2 and we earned being able to play in the state championship game against Bishop McGuinness. We ended up losing that game by 1 point. It was as heartbreaking a loss as you could possibly imagine. But the what ifs that come back from that to me is it all comes back to what if Cam Brooks doesn't get hurt? Now, the caveat to this, of course, is I have a tremendous amount of respect for Coach Thompson. I think that Bishop McGuinness is as historic it's probably one of the more underrated historic programs in North Carolina, certainly within the past 20 years, because they've won multiple state titles. They've been to the Final Four multiple times. It seems like year in and year out, Coach Thompson is going to have a group of mostly Division II and Division III players who come in and play their roles at an extremely high level. And this was a team that was no different than that. It was a team with great size. They had a lot going for them, good athleticism with Andrew, great guard play, and some big time shooters. But before Cam Brooks got hurt in that game, we were up by, I believe, either 7 or 8 at the time. To perfectly summarize how important he was to that group, they hit a three-pointer to cut the lead to 5. So everyone's excited. Their student section's going crazy. Cam Brooks drives up the right side of the floor and shoots a three-pointer from seemingly 30 feet away in the Dean Dome. And he absolutely cashes it. Like, he was just that type of player. He's one of the most underrated players in that geographic area, with certainly within the last 2 decades. And he was a phenomenal player for us in the year that he was eligible to play. Um, had a Division III opportunity or two, I believe, his way. Averett was definitely one of those, recruited by Chris Sauce, who is now our guy, now associate head coach at UNC Pembroke. But the ripple down effect of that is, and you know this, say that you do end up winning that one. What does that mean just for the next year? Because it's really hard to repeat. It's really easy to be hungry when you don't win everything and you're very close. So to me, how does that impact the next year's psyche? Now, me personally, I think we run it back anyway. That's just me personally. But what does it mean for 2 years from then, 3 years from them, 4 years from them? What is it? Those are the types of things that I think about often. So tons of respect to Bishop McGuinness, absolutely taking nothing away. But I will stand 10 toes down that if Cam Brooks is healthy, that is a state championship that goes back to Henderson.
maybe Cam was a great player, and it's one of those things where, especially at a 1A school, your depth's just not. You don't have that type of luxury to have a ton of guys, so every piece is that much more important. And yeah,
Sure.
losing a key guy like that's huge. As far as you asking about the ripple effect of next year and thereafter, I think we have to personally account for your individual players and kind of the dog that they had in them. I don't know if you
100%.
could ever have counted them out. Whether I don't think that they would have lost that hunger. They just don't strike me as that group of kids. So Javante Waverly comes to mind, and I know that he would have fought to get back no matter what. But
It
yeah,
was a him, Caleb, AK, Nick Green, the whole nine. So
oh
like,
yeah,
it was a great starting five that ran it back again for
good
sure. And
times.
I have others written down here in terms of role players for that group, but for the sake of time, we'll get into the next section. So the next section